Welcome, and thank you for joining us for today's BestRide.com Facebook Live. And today, we're going to be answering the very important question, should your next vehicle be electric? My name is Eliana Raggio, and I'll be your moderator today. And it is my pleasure to introduce you to the guy who's got all the answers. Sam Abuel-Samid is a principal analyst leading Guidehouse Insights e-mobility research service with a focus on transportation, electrification, automated driving, and mobility services. Sam regularly contributes to a number of publications, including Forbes, and BestRide.com. He also co-hosts the Wheel Bearings podcast. And Sam, thank you so much for being here with us. We have a lot to cover, so let's get right to it, because I already got my first question lined up for you. I think what most consumers want to know is, well, okay, before buying any car, but especially before you buy an electric vehicle, what questions should a consumer ask themselves as they're shopping for their next ride?
Well, and for any vehicle, the first thing you need to ask yourself is, what do you want to use the vehicle for? What's the purpose? What kind of driving do you do? How far do you drive? Where do you drive? And that applies regardless of what the energy source is. For an EV in particular, it goes a little bit farther because with an EV, you have to think about where are you going to charge it. Today, at least, and for the foreseeable future, it takes longer to charge an EV than it does to put gas in a internal combustion car. So you have to think about, what is your charging situation going to be? Do you have charging available at home? Do you have off-street parking available where you can pull your car into the driveway or the garage and plug it in every night? Or are you going to rely on public charging? Or do you have access to workplace charging? So those are the big things. And then, the other part is how far are you going to be typically driving? Do you do a lot of long road trips? Or is most of your driving around town? I mean, the vast majority of Americans drive less than 40 miles a day. So actually an EV can fit the lifestyle for almost everybody in the United States. But, how often do you take road trips? So these are the kinds of questions you need to ask yourself.
That is excellent advice. Starting right off the bat with some great advice, Sam. Thank you so much. Okay, but as you had said, charging stations aren't as prevalent as gas stations. They're not on every corner like a gas station is. And that's definitely one of the main concerns that might prevent any person from buying an electric vehicle is charging station accessibility. So what do we tell those consumers? Is it, you're plugged in, excuse the pun, to what's happening in this world. Do we know if there is going to be more charging stations set into the infrastructure in the United States as we move on towards electrification?
Oh, absolutely. There's more charging stations going in all the time, both DC fast charging stations, which, as the name implies, can charge your vehicle a lot faster, as well as lower speed, so-called level 2, 240 volt charging stations that take a few hours to do it. So there's more charging stations going in every day. There's currently about 100,000 publicly available chargers. And as I mentioned earlier, if you have off-street parking, then you have a charging station at home. You generally don't need to worry about public charging. You can, when you get home in the evening or whenever your day ends, you just plug it in, and more than likely, it will be fully charged the next morning when you're ready to head out again. Because as I said, most people drive less than 40 miles a day, and in an overnight charge, you can easily, fill up completely recharge a battery on a modern EV. So that's not a problem. And then if you have workplace charging, again, when you get to work, you can plug it in, you're good to go. If you live in an apartment or you live somewhere where you have rely on street parking, that's when you have to start thinking about, where is there public charging available to me? One of the cool things that's happening is they're starting to see more DC fast chargers being put in at locations where people are going on a regular basis, like, for example, a grocery store. Last year, GM announced a partnership with EVgo. They're putting in 2,700 DC fast chargers at places like grocery stores, where typically you're going to go there once or twice a week. You're going to be there for at least 20 to 30 minutes. That's enough, for the average driver. You get there, you plug in your car, you go get your groceries, you come out, your car is fully topped off again, and you're ready to go for several more days at least. So it's becoming less and less of an issue every year.
I love that you are so plugged in to what's going on with the charging stations, because that's, I think, one of the major concerns. But do you think that they're going to be putting charging stations in at, like, stadiums or near there, or like off the highway? I mean, how long does it take to charge up a car?
Yeah,
An
so
EV.
so they are putting in charging stations at all kinds of locations. A lot of public parking facilities, parking garages, and parking lots are putting in chargers. A lot of cities are putting in curbside charging in various locations. Stores, a lot of stores, malls are setting aside places for charging. So you'll often find them, right next to the building, right next to the store. So if you're driving an EV, you'll often get preferred parking right up by the door in many cases, right next to the handicap spots. So that can actually be really advantageous. And of course, they're also putting them in at locations along highway rest stops for road trips, putting in DC fast charging. The time it takes to charge depends on the vehicle and the type of charger it is. Some vehicles have a maximum charging rate of about 50 kilowatts, like the Chevy Bolt. Excuse me, and that can take up to about a little more than an hour to a little more than an hour to get to an 80% charge. Some vehicles, like the upcoming Hyundai Ioniq 5 that's launching this fall, and the Kia EV6, will support 350 kilowatt charging. So they can go from a 10% charge to an 80% charge in just 18 minutes. And I think they'll add about 90 miles of range in a little more than 5 minutes. So it's getting faster all the time.
Wow, that's incredible. Okay, that's fantastic information. In going through social media, we're always hearing about some new electric car. It feels like I think all car manufacturers are like 100% in on an all electric future, and they're announcing new electric vehicle models and body styles and options. I feel like almost every week there's a new announcement. I mean, even Lamborghini, I read, is launching an EV. I didn't think that was ever going to happen, but here we are. So what can you tell us about the current variety of electric vehicle choices that are on the market? You already listed some of the most popular ones and some of the ones that people are most looking forward to. There's not as many EVs, electric vehicles, out there on the market right now as there are regular, combustion engine vehicles. So what kind of choices do people have?
So as of today, as we're having this conversation, there are about 20 EVs available in the US market. By this time next year, there will be more than double that number.
What?
A year after that, that number will probably double again. So within the next 3 years, we expect over 100 different EV models available. And that number is increasing all the time as we get new announcements from automakers. You mentioned, most automakers are moving very aggressively to introduce new EVs. Just a couple of weeks ago, Stellantis, the company formerly known as Fiat Chrysler, had an EV day, and they talked about by 2025, they will have electric versions of just about every model they build available. In fact, the Jeep brand, they're one of the most popular brands. By 2025, there will be an electric version of every model in the Jeep lineup, from the little Renegade compact SUV all the way up to the full-size Wagoneer that's just going on sale now. And those are all coming. We're also going to have at least 20 from General Motors. Volkswagen is launching a whole bunch. Ford is launching a bunch of new EVs. They already have the Mustang Mach-E, which you can see behind me on the screen. And later this fall, they're launching the e-Transit, an electric version of the Transit van. Next spring, there's the F-150 Lightning. So the F-150 is the most popular vehicle in the U.S., and they're launching a battery electric version of that will actually be the most powerful F-150, the fastest accelerating F-150 ever built, in addition to being zero emissions and electric. And there's also vehicles like the GMC Hummer, the Cadillac Lyriq. There are a few manufacturers that are a little bit slower in adopting EV. Toyota is, they're more focused on their hybrids, pushing their hybrids, but they are launching some EVs as well. The first one, the BZ4X, which hopefully will get a new name before it goes on sale next year.
There's a whole lot of letters.
A mid-size crossover that goes on sale about this time next year. So there's going to be there's more options coming all the time.
Okay, because while there's lots of options, and as you said, might double in the next year and double that the year after, consumers are not really adopting to electric vehicles, I think, as quickly as OEMs are putting them out there. But I think that's going to change. And I think that once people get to know more information, like on today's broadcast, about all the advantages that an electric vehicle can give to you, it might overcome some of that reticence that consumers have right now. So let's talk about some consumer concerns and the most prevalent ones, and see if you can educate all of us on what consumers should really, so the real scoop on what electric cars can offer. So let's talk about the first thing. We know it's good for the environment, but will it save us money? So electric cars, I think right now, they're still a bit more expensive to purchase, or just slightly above the gasoline models. But overall, over the length of ownership, there's maintenance costs, there's cost savings on gas, for instance. Will an electric vehicle save you money?
So the short answer is yes. Over the life of the vehicle, it'll generally cost you less to operate an electric vehicle than a gasoline or diesel vehicle. Long answer is a little more complicated. Depends on how much you drive every year, what kind of vehicle you get, how long you keep your vehicle. But in general, yes, it will cost you less to own and operate an EV. Right now, they are generally still a little more expensive than the equivalent gasoline vehicles, but that price gap is narrowing. I mentioned earlier the Ford F-150 Lightning.
Yes.
The base price on that truck when it launches next spring is $40,000. That's before any tax incentives. And that's for a four-wheel drive crew cab full-size pickup truck. The equivalent gasoline engine version of that same truck, a base F-150 XL crew cab with four-wheel drive, cost you $42,500, and it's not eligible for any tax breaks. So that one right up front is going to be cheaper than the gas equivalent. And the same goes throughout that lineup. So what we're going to see is, as more and more EVs become available, manufacturers will be able to benefit from economies of scale. As they build more, they can the investment, the engineering costs to build those get spread out over more vehicles, so the cost comes down. And so what we're rapidly getting to the point in the next few years where overall the purchase price of an EV will be the same, or maybe even in some cases less than a gasoline equivalent. And then after that, you're going to spend less on maintenance, no oil changes. You still have to change tires and wiper blades and things like that, brake pads, the wear items, those things still, there's no difference there, but you'll never have to get another oil change in your vehicle. Your energy costs for fuel, electricity is a lot cheaper than gasoline. Typically,
it is right now.
Yeah. Typically you'll pay, you'll end up spending about 2/3 less to charge your vehicle than if you're putting gas in it. Now, if you're relying on DC fast charging all the time, that is more expensive, and that price advantage will be less there. But overall, you'll still end up spending a lot less on energy for your vehicle than if you're driving a gas or diesel vehicle.
Thank you for that, because everyone wanted to know about that. And affordability, affordability is always an issue, especially now. We're in a tight economy, but I'm so glad you mentioned, and you did it real fast, but we're going to go back to it. You mentioned a tax credit. So other than maintenance costs and replacing wiper blades, um, tell us about these tax credits. What, are there more reasons, more bang for our buck when we purchase an electric vehicle? Because states and the federal government are trying to encourage people to go towards electric vehicles. Isn't that right?
Right. So right now, the federal government has a $7,500 or up to $7,500 federal tax credit. Depends on the size of the battery, but all battery electric vehicles are have a big enough battery to get the full 7,500. But the way the current program is set up, it's limited to the first 200,000 EV sales by a manufacturer.
Okay.
So GM and Tesla have already surpassed that 200,000 mark. So if you buy a GM EV or one from Tesla, no more federal tax credit, but you can still get state tax credits. And from every other manufacturer, you're still eligible for that $7,500 federal tax credit. So right off the bat, you can save $7,500. So going back to that example of the F-150 Lightning, sticker price starts at $40,000, $7,500, you're down to $32,500. So now you're $10,000 cheaper than that equivalent gas truck. And then on top of that, depending on what state you live in, there may be various state incentives as well. So California's got some tax breaks. A bunch of other states do. And so you need to look up what's available in your own state. You can actually check if you go to fueleconomy.gov, which is the EPA's website. You can get information there about some of those, and there's various other places where you can find information about what incentives are available in your local area. And so, California, for example, I think you can get up to another $2,500 off from the state of California, depending on the vehicle you're buying. So that's up to $10,000 off the sticker price of the vehicle.
Wow. Okay. You don't get that on a regular basis when you buy a car. Thank you for that. Okay. We're going to get to another consumer concern that somebody just pointed out to me just the other day. And I think a lot more consumers are concerned about it because it's a splash on the news headlines. And if they're concerned about it, then we're concerned about it over here at Best Ride. So here we go. Battery fires. How prevalent are they in electric vehicles? Because like I said, you get one battery fire in an electric vehicle and it's splashed across the news. But are they really, is it a really big problem?
No, it's not. It's not very frequent. It happens quite rarely, actually. So, excuse me. Usually, it only happens if there's a manufacturing defect in the battery, and then what'll happen is sometimes when you're charging the battery, it might catch fire if there's a short circuit in the battery. That is extremely rare. It's far less common than gasoline vehicles catching fire and crash. The other circumstance is if the vehicle is in a crash and the battery is physically damaged, that can also cause a fire. Same thing is true with a gasoline vehicle. So the only the most notable recent example, the Chevy Bolt, some of the early model year Chevy Bolts, they had a recall recently on those because of a manufacturing defect in some of the batteries, not all of them. They're recalling them now to test them all and figure out which ones need to be replaced. There's been a total of 7 fires over the last 4 or 5 years with those vehicles.
Out of how many? 7 out of
I believe about 70,000 vehicles.
So it's not like it's 7 out of 14 vehicles.
No. It's quite infrequent. And in fact, with most EVs, the number is far less frequent than that. So I think it's not really a problem that most people need to be concerned about.
Fair enough. Okay. Moving on to something else that a lot of consumers are very interested to hear about. Because you mentioned the Ford F-150, the Lightning. Well, a lot of people use that, including my husband, for for work, for towing, for doing all kinds of work-related things. And many people have wondered if an EV has the kind of power that they're used to with a gasoline-powered engine. So let's address that. talk to me about power. What can we expect from an electric vehicle?
Power is not a problem. There's plenty of power and actually typically more torque than what you'll get from an EV. So when
Really?
you're accelerating, it's actually the torque is what you feel as that force that's moving you forward. And one of the beauties of an electric motor is it produces its maximum torque right from 0 RPM, from 0 speed. So as soon as you step on the accelerator pedal, you're going to feel that torque. If you've never driven an EV, you really need to go take one for a test drive and just see what it feels like, because it feels really good accelerating. You've probably seen videos on YouTube of Teslas at the drag strip, and Elon Musk is always talking about how fast his cars accelerate. And
Yes. And he has that, like,
they've
the
gone
thruster button and
yeah, I mean they've kind of gone overboard with that. I mean nobody needs a car that goes 0 to 60 in 2 seconds. But that set aside, even for mainstream EVs like the Bolt, like the Hyundai Kona EV, the new the VW ID4, all of these actually feel really good off the line. You'll have no problem at all accelerating up to highway speed when you're merging. It'll generally feel better and smoother than a gas engine will. Towing is not a problem. I'll use the F-150 example again. With the extended range battery, it's I think 563 horsepower and 770 foot-pounds of torque. It's going to be able to tow over 10,000 pounds. But the amount you can tow is not an issue. The one thing you need to keep in mind is, regardless of whether it's a gas, diesel, or electric vehicle, when you're towing, your energy efficiency goes way down. So with a gas truck, your fuel economy, your mileage is typically going to drop in half. So you might go from 20 miles per gallon to 10 miles per gallon when you're towing. The same thing is true with an EV. With all that extra weight, the extra drag, you're going to use a lot more energy. And so depending on what your towing situation is, if you're not towing long distances, if you're not towing a trailer across country, you're just towing 50, 75 miles, not a problem. You can tow with most of these vehicles and tow a pretty heavy trailer. But if you're doing long distance running, towing, then maybe an EV is not quite the right choice just yet.
So, okay, money's not an issue. Power's not an issue. Battery fire's not an issue. This is all great news. And it's good for the environment. But one more consumer concern that I wanted to address today, and you brought it up because you said, oh, you should go out there and you should test drive one. Okay, so that's what it is, the driving experience, because not every car has the rumble of a Ford Mustang, or the feel of firing up a Dodge Hellcat. Yet both of those manufacturers, as you had earlier mentioned, they both announced electric versions of those two classic muscle cars. And I don't think that a lot of people are happy about that. But you know what? They're not the only OEMs that are announcing that. So Sam, you actually review a lot of cars, and you've driven your fair share of different electric vehicles in your line of work. So talk to us about the driving experience and how it differs from, well, a regular car.
Yeah, I mean, it is a different experience. If you like the feel of a classic muscle car, the noise, the rumbling of the V8, you're going to miss that in an EV.
What is it? Does it sound like? Is it like what is
well,
it?
I mean, in general, there's basically no noise. There's almost no noise. Some manufacturers do provide some synthetic noise, that some artificial sounds, like the Mach-E, for example. They've got 3 different driving modes: whisper, engaged, and unbridled. In whisper, it stays quiet, obviously. In unbridled mode, they use the car's speakers to create a sort of rumbling noise. They're not trying to replicate the sound of a big V8 engine, but they have a sound that gives you a little bit of a rumble, a little kind of hints at the classic Mustang, but it's all synthetic. And so you can turn that off if you don't like it. Other manufacturers are doing other things. In some cases, they're doing kind of a spaceship sound. BMW, for example, they actually hired composer Hans Zimmer,
No way.
who's scored a lot of movies.
Yeah.
They hired him to create a unique soundtrack for their electric vehicles, and so it's going to be something completely different. That is, I'm not even sure what it sounds like yet. I haven't actually heard it yet. So one thing I think we can probably expect to see in the coming years is the option, kind of like we used to buy ringtones for our phones,
Yeah.
is the ability to buy different sounds for your EV. I expect we'll be able to do that. I think Porsche is already starting to do that with the Taycan. So you can create whatever soundtrack you want for your EV.
Oh my gosh, that would be so cool. Now that is crazy good information, Sam. Thank you for that. Okay, so I think a lot of I think we've addressed I think most of the major big concerns that consumers have, but I still think there's some questions out there because while electric vehicles may be sort of new to the market. Hybrids have been around for a little while, and I think a lot of people are still confused about what the difference is between a hybrid and an electric vehicle, and is there a considerable benefit to either?
Yeah, so a hybrid, essentially, as the name implies, is a mix of the two, of a gas engine and an electric. So you have a car with a gasoline engine, you add an electric motor in there, and what it does, one of the beauties of an electric motor, unlike a gas engine, a gas engine, when you burn the gas, it makes power and makes the car go forwards, but you can't reverse the process. You can't take your exhaust and turn it back into gasoline when you're braking. With an electric motor, when you feed electricity into the motor, it turns and makes the car go forward. But when you let off the accelerator, you can have the wheels turning the electric motor, and the motor then generates electricity that goes back into the battery. That's called regenerative braking. It slows you down, so it uses your brakes less, puts energy back into the battery, recovers some of that energy of the vehicle's motion, and then it can use that the next time you accelerate. So that's what a hybrid does, is it adds a smaller electric motor into that powertrain, so that when you let off the accelerator, it will actually regenerate energy from your slowing down, put that into a smaller battery than what you'll find in a full battery electric vehicle. And then the next time you accelerate, it will add that in to what the engine's doing. So the engine doesn't have to work as hard, and you get better fuel efficiency. And in some cases, depending on what your speed is and how much energy is in the battery, you can actually drive a hybrid around in completely electric mode, so the engine can shut off. And the same thing also happens when you come to a stop. It'll shut the engine off and it'll accelerate away, starting with the electric motor. So that's what a hybrid does. And then there's plug-in hybrids, which are the same basic thing, but with a larger battery that you can plug in and charge. And right now in my driveway, I've got a Jeep Wrangler 4xe, which is a plug-in hybrid, which has about 20 miles of electric range. So with a plug-in hybrid, you plug it in at night, you unplug it in the morning, you can drive it around on electricity. And then when the time comes to, if you need to take a longer trip that's beyond the range of the battery, you just keep driving and it just operates like a regular hybrid. And so that, may be a really good option for some people that, that need to take longer trips sometimes and don't want to worry about planning where they're going to stop to charge. So especially like for a family, something like the Chrysler Pacifica hybrid, plug-in hybrid, it can be a really great option. It's got 35 miles of electric range, so you can do almost all your daily driving on electricity alone. Just plug it in at night, unplug it in the morning, never use any gas. And then when it's time for a road trip to the grandparents' place, then you just keep driving just like a regular hybrid. You don't have to worry about where you're going to stop and charge.
That's awesome. Oh my gosh, great information. Thank you so much for the lesson on hybrids. We all needed that. But I love that you mentioned you have an electric Jeep that you're going to. You review a lot of cars, right?
Yeah.
How many cars do you usually review in a month?
Usually about 4 a month. I get something different every week.
That's amazing. Okay, so earlier you mentioned the electric Hummer. I personally am very excited about the electric Hummer. But what electric vehicles are you personally excited about that are going to be hitting the market soon?
Oh, I I like the Mach-E. I've driven that before, and I'm going to be driving one again next week for a vacation road trip. And it's a great vehicle. But one that I'm really looking forward to trying out is the Kia EV6. So Kia and Hyundai are part of the same company, the Hyundai Motor Group, and they have a new electric vehicle platform. They're going to be launching about 24 EVs over the next 3 years. And the first one from Kia is called the EV6, which is a 5-door hatchback, very sporty. There's going to be a version of it called the EV6 GT that will do 0 to 60 in 3.5 seconds. Very quick. It's a great looking vehicle, but also the Hyundai Ioniq 5, which is based on the same hardware but different styling, kind of more of a crossover look to it, is also a great option. I think I'm a car person, not an SUV or crossover person or a truck person. To me, a truck is a great thing to be able to borrow once in a while, but not something I necessarily need to own. But if you do want to own a truck, there's going to be a bunch of electric options. The F-150 Lightning I talked about. Chevy is going to have an electric Silverado coming. GMC is going to have an electric Sierra. Ram just announced they're doing an electric version of the Ram 1500 in 2024. And then there's also some newcomers like Rivian that are this fall will be launching their R1T pickup and their R1S SUV. Those are they're a little smaller than the full size trucks. They're more of a mid-size, but they're also going to be a really interesting option for a lot of people.
Oh, that's wonderful. Wow. That's all right. So, this is what we brought you here for, Sam. Let's boil it down. We got one last question for you before we close out the show. If someone right now is in the market to buy a car, should their next vehicle be electric?
Circling back to the beginning of this conversation, I think for a lot of people, it should definitely be something that they're considering. It may not necessarily be the right one for them right this minute for this generation. As I said, there's still a limited number of EVs available, so you might not find something in quite the right size or form factor or price point that you need today. But I would say probably, if not now, certainly by the next time you buy a car, there almost certainly will be something that fits your needs. And so you should absolutely be taking a look at it. And even if you don't buy an EV now, you probably will next time around.
I love that. Oh my gosh. I'm looking forward to seeing how different the auto industry options are going to be in the next 2 to 5 years compared to what you're saying to me today. It's going to be a big swing towards electrification. Is it exciting for you?
Oh yeah. I've been in the auto industry for 30 years and this is the most interesting time in my career. More things are changing faster now than they ever have.
And with that, I'm going to have to agree with you on that one. Thank you so much for being here today, Sam. This is not going to be the last time you and I speak, my friend. Great conversation, obviously extremely knowledgeable about what's happening in the auto industry, and definitely going to be back on for another show for a Best Ride Facebook Live with me at some point. So audience, if you didn't get enough of Sam Abu El Samid, don't worry, I got some stuff to tell you. Check out Sam's amazing podcast at wheelbearings.media. He addresses the most interesting automotive stories of the week. He reviews cars. He'll tell you all about that. And he answers listeners' questions. So you go to wheelbearings.media to check that out. And you can also go to Guidehouse Insights to get more information about what Sam does on a regular basis with the auto industry and insights there. And you can also go to bestride.com. Sam is actually a contributor to some of our blogs. And I think the last one you did was what the chip shortage means for the auto industry, which of course, like you said, it's a very interesting time to be in the auto industry. So you can check that out at bestride.com on the website where the news and blogs are. And speaking of Best Ride, let me tell you, Best Ride is the smartest, easiest way to find a car online. Fact. 1 in 3 people don't know what vehicle they actually want to buy. Well, guess what? BestRide.com can actually help by showing numerous vehicles to consider, helping you narrow it down to the one that's right for you. And you can search by body style, connect with local car dealers, read car reviews, industry news, and other auto-related news. And you can search by new, used, certified, pre-owned. You can search by make and model and even look at cars that are available right in your own zip code. And it's a great time to buy a car. Best Ride can help. Search millions of cars and find your best ride. So if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions regarding our broadcast and our topics, please feel free to contact me directly. I'm Eliana at bestride.com. And on behalf of Sam Abuel Samid and the great folks at Guidehouse Insights, as well as the rest of the amazing crew at bestride.com, thank you all so very much for spending this time with us today. And I hope to see you all on another broadcast from your friends at bestride.com. Take care, everyone. Sam, wave goodbye.
Bye.